Hello everybody, welcome to the Boxing Science Podcast. This is episode 60, another Q&A session where I'm going to be answering your questions about a range of different subjects regarding strength and conditioning, sports science in boxing and combat sports. Before we get started, we've hit a milestone on the channel. We've hit 100,000 subscribers. Absolutely buzzing. Can't wait to get the plaque in the Boxing Science studio. I want to say a massive thank you to our subscribers that have shown their support, sending their questions for these Q&A sessions, and also help the growth of the channel. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button so we can hit our next milestone. Don't know what we're going to be aiming for. 1 million maybe? I think we're going to be a bit far off there, but we just want to keep growing the channel and keep giving you even better content. Okay, so let's go on to this week's episode of the Boxing Science Podcast. Okay, first question from Preacher Macon. What exercises makes the most progress in the athletes that you train overall? Especially if you've only got limited time with them to train with them each week. That's a really, really good question. And when I get this question about like, what is the single exercise that I'd use? What's the most impactful one? It's very difficult for me to answer because even in like boxing overall, part of a massive jigsaw in terms of what each little area has a big contribution to the full picture. So strength and conditioning is just one tiny little bit. And then you've got your high intensity conditioning, you've got making weight, your nutrition, your recovery, your boxing, sparring, pad work, bag work, shadow boxing, psychological preparation. Everything kind of fits into the bigger picture. So it's very difficult for me to choose one specific area where I see like the most effective change. If I say like one key exercise that I put in every single program would be a trap bar deadlift. And the reason why is because this is where we can really load up the athlete in terms of targeting maximum strength. Low technical demand on this, even though you've got to get the movement pattern right, create some strong postural stability to create some foundations for stronger lifting. It's very low in terms of technical demand, so you can really start loading this up, and it's targeting low body rate of force development, core strength and stability, posterior shoulder strength, which is really important for the health of the shoulders, and also grip strength at the same time. You're getting a real big bang for your buck by using trap bar deadlifts. And also you can manipulate the volumes and intensity of the trap bar deadlift as well. So if you're wanting to target maximum strength, you can do some heavy lifting. If you want to go even higher than maximum strength, you can do trap bar deadlifts from blocks. Then you can start working down the force velocity curve where you're working more on explosive actions. So you can add bands to the trap bar deadlift to work more strength speed. You can attach a gym aware to it to give an athlete feedback on velocity-based training and go on lesser loads, let's say about 80% 1 rep max or maybe even 75% 1 rep max, and have velocity targets to encourage speed and intent and rate of force development. Then also you can start transitioning the trap bar deadlift into a trap bar jump. So instead of going decelerating at the end and keeping your feet on the floor, you can accelerate all the way through into a trap bar jump. And then this is going to be working in that strength speed and speed strength phases. One exercise that I'd always put in every single program would be a trap bar deadlift. In terms of conditioning, the main one that I would use is the air bike. The air bike is a fantastic tool where you can manipulate the volumes intensity to work on different fitness adaptations. The main reason why I choose the air bike over running, working on a treadmill or a curved treadmill is because you can go to them extreme intensities on an air bike. Something that would be quite risky to do on a treadmill because obviously higher force demands going through the lower limb, you might end up getting fatigued and injured from this. So we can do on the air bike, we can do max effort sprints, 30-second max out sprints, and really push our athletes to them extreme levels of fatigue. Push to these parts, this is where we're going to get our adaptation, especially on the 30-second sprints. More or less gone around the houses there to say the one or two key things that I'd put in every single program. That would be a trap bar deadlift and the air bike. Okay, next question from Butter254. What are the best exercises for a strong high guard? Another fantastic question and something where S&C can have a transfer towards boxing, even though strong high guard would be specific to the boxing and worked on in their technical sessions. There's things that you can do to be stronger in this position. I know that like Conor McGregor in a video that surfaced a few years ago on social media was saying about doing chin-ups instead of doing it in a neutral grip. Doing chin-ups to make sure that getting a nice tight guard in there. So doing like some sort of pull-ups and isometric work in a pulling position would be quite good. Sometimes we do on pull-ups, we actually do an isometric hold at the top, and this can transfer into a tighter guard. And then you've got to be thinking about like what we need in that tight guard. We need tricep strength to be able to block and parry, to push forward and work across. So we'll be needing some sort of forearm exercises, so reverse wrist curls, and doing some like heavy loaded carries, some pinch grip holds as well, and be able to strengthen the forearm. But also here we've got triceps that are working. So doing some isometric tricep push downs would be good, because you're holding, even though it looks very different to your stance and guard, you're pushing down. And if we just transfer into this position, that would be very good exercise to be working the isometric strength of the triceps. And then you've got to be thinking about the variation of how you'd block a shot, whether it's coming from this direction, from the outside. You'd be more working kind of that internal rotational strength and external rotation strength. So working the posterior shoulder muscles would be really vital in this, because we're wanting to stop these actions from happening. So some sideline isometrics or standing isometrics with the dumbbell, and a range of posterior shoulder strength exercises, such as like banded face pulls, banded triple threat, and also band pull aparts as well. Even though these don't look specific to that guard position, it's going to be strengthening the posterior shoulders. So it's going to be helping us stay in that isometric position to resist internal rotation, and also to be able to be strong in that external rotation to be able to block the shots. So hopefully that gives you a good idea if this is something that you're struggling with in terms of being in that stance and guard and being in a strong high guard position. Most of it is down to technical and that concentration whilst being in that position, but there's a lot of strength exercises that you can use to help supplement being in a strong high guard position. Okay, got a question from Hector Perez, all the way from Mexico. What are the best grips to do for pull-ups? Neutral, supine, or prone grips for boxing? Listed a range of fighters from Shakur Stevenson to Mayweather, McGregor, all doing them in neutral grips. And then you got people like Teofimo Lopez, Inoue AJ doing them in a prone grip. Which is better for a fighter, or does it depend on the person? Generally, it depends on the adaptation that you're targeting. If you are targeting upper back strength and you're wanting to optimize the amount of upper back muscle activation and the amount of load that you can do in a pulling position, it would be in a neutral grip position. A lot of people go for a wide grip. The reason why I don't like a wide grip is because boxers are quite weak in terms of external rotation due to being in this high guard position, internally rotated. They find external rotation quite difficult. So when they go into a wide grip pull-up and they're in this position, they're having to hold their body weight and more, they're going to be compensating in some sort of way. They're going to be either internally rotating shoulder, which is going to be quite problematic, or they're going to be flaring the rib cage and using the lower back, or not getting that full range of motion. So I like going into that neutral grip position because you can get that full range of motion, keep the arm elbows pinned back, and get as much activation going through the lats. So if you're looking to improve upper back strength, I would pick that. Now, the prone grip can be a quite good tool to be targeting the forearm muscle. So if you've got a fighter that is struggling maybe with grip strength, forearm strength and conditioning as well, doing a prone grip might be quite useful. I'd be using that as a supplementary exercise. So maybe in the off season, where they're doing like high rep ranges, I would be potentially going for that to strengthen up the forearms. When they're going into maximum strength phases, I'll be primarily targeting the most effective exercise to get the most amount of load in there, and that would be through neutral grip. Close grip pull-ups are quite good for boxing as well because we're in this guard position. So in the previous question, you just answered it. Keeping nice and strong through this guard is important. Like a supinated position would be quite good. But what I'd say from that, you're losing that activation going through the lats as much and more on the arms. So let's say if you've got a fighter that is needing to increase some strength or some size in their arm muscles, I would be going for the close grip pull-ups with a supinated grip. Pronated grip, good for forearm muscles and conditioning. Use it as supplementary exercise. But if you're purely looking for pulling strength and targeting the upper back muscles, I would be looking to use a neutral grip pull-up. Next question from Niall. What are your opinions on purely doing old school training? Jogging, sprinting, jump rope, shadow boxing, heavy bag sparring, and calisthenics. I'm curious if it's like the Pareto's principle, where you get 80% of the benefits from old school training and modern training just adds the rest 20%. So I often get asked the question about old school training methods. Very much when I was first starting boxing science, always had the question of, why didn't the old school boxers do strength conditioning? Why were they still so successful without all these training methods? Probably because nobody was doing them training methods back then. Even playing field, everybody was kind of using the old school training methods then. But then also thinking about if they were boxing today, they would probably take part in some sort of strength conditioning. Got old school fighters such as Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Mike Tyson doing old school training methods. They always look to try and optimize their physical performance to match their technical performance. That's why they did intense circuits and ab workouts and going out doing road running, because they wanted to be as fit and as strong and as explosive as possible to help them in the ring. If they were still boxing today, they probably would do strength conditioning. For example, Mike Tyson, I know it's not a fantastic example because how the fight went about with Jake Paul, but he had to prepare for a fight. He prepared very differently for that fight than he did when he was in his prime. He used the new school methods to try and get his body in the best possible shape for that fight. So that's an example of an old school fighter implementing new methods. Even when you think about like Floyd Mayweather was fit and strong, always like in shape and condition, always conditioned over the 12 rounds. A lot of that was probably down to his fighting style, being able to control his opponent and to be able to box at the intensity that he always wanted to. He said that he didn't like strength conditioning for years, but he did some form of strength conditioning all the time, like videos of him doing the lat pull down and ab wheel rollouts. And these are all exercises that are used in strength conditioning, but just done in a more structured way. And he even started like using strength conditioning towards the back end of his career. So he was very much in the old school phase as the new school of training started coming in. You see like all the top fighters now doing strength conditioning. You look at the top 10 pound for pound fighters now, they all do some form of strength conditioning. You've got Usyk, Inoue, Biev, Bivol. They all post so much about their strength conditioning, which is fantastic for the whole industry, because now all the younger fighters are looking at it and thinking, right, that's the way that I need to train to optimize my physical performance to then improve my boxing performance. I have gone a little bit leeway with this answer now, but I'm going to get to it. Like, what part of old school training still needs to be part of the program? Well, you got your fundamentals of boxing: pads, bags, shadow boxing, sparring, skipping ropes. All these should be still part of your boxing training. It's the physical side that's probably improved the most in terms of like the use of sports science, strength conditioning, high intensity conditioning as well. But boxing more or less kind of stays the same. There's obviously improvements in technology now in terms of how you can track heart rates during boxing. Also, there's data analysis. So we've got Jabber.ai that I'm going to be really interested to see how they progress in terms of in not only analysing the fights, but how that's going to be now being used in training, how they can analyse performance there. But just using video analysis is really good, where you can video a spar and straight away you can highlight where an athlete needs to be working on. I'm not somebody that will come in and just go, right, it's all about the new school training methods. The old school training methods obviously are fundamental to helping a boxer improve their boxing performance. It's the new school training methods such as strength conditioning, high intensity conditioning, nutrition, recovery that can help improve their physical performance, which can then help them become better fighters, because there's not going to be any physical or mental blocks in terms of what their boxing potential can be. Okay, the next question is from Cremidis773. Is it worth it for a boxer out of camp to work on Olympic lifts so eventually they can be programmed into their strength conditioning? Or is it just the time and resources not worth it? This might be the best Q&A that we've ever done. Some of the questions today are fantastic. Really got me thinking as well. Would I put in Olympic lifting with a fighter now? In the past, I'd probably think the same as you in terms of like off camp can be quite good to learn the technical components of Olympic lifting. But would I favour doing Olympic lifting over like load of jumps, for example? Probably not. I'll probably not put Olympic lifting in the programs now. I've spent a lot of time working on the technical components for fighters. And then when it gets actually to the loading stage of being able to do it, they're only doing it for like 3 weeks, for example, in terms of strength speed block. When you start reintroducing them into some sort of Olympic lifting, you've got to increase that load steadily because the technique needs to be redefined. The loading strategies, you need to load them up incrementally. It's going to be very difficult for that block to then be optimized for strength speed. Then I think about like what stage of training camp this is in when you're doing strength speed. You're going to be doing a lot of sparring. The fatigue coming into the strength and conditioning sessions is going to be a lot higher. So you need a lot of concentration whilst doing Olympic lifting, whereas like doing a trap bar jump, all you need to think about is gripping the bar, making sure that you've got a strong posture and being able to jump as high as you can. Very low technical demand, not a lot to really think about whilst in these sessions. I'd say that I'd get a lot more out of a loaded jump rather than doing Olympic lifting. It makes sense in terms of the question that you asked. And if you are really wanting to put in Olympic lifting, this would be the right strategy. If you've got a long period of time with an athlete, let's say you've got a younger athlete that's an amateur boxer that you're going to be working with for many years and you're thinking of a few years in advance, it might be worth teaching them the technical components of Olympic lifting so then you can use it at any time. But working with most professional fighters, they're wanting to be strong, fit, explosive as much as possible going into their next fight. So I've got to be thinking about how I can get them into peak condition within an 8, 10 or 12 week block. It makes sense what you're saying, and definitely you would go the right approach. But for me, in terms of my coaching philosophy at the moment, I'd be just working in the off season, working on different physical components, red zone conditioning. In terms of their strength and conditioning work, I've been more looking either increase some muscle size, be doing some strength and hypertrophy work, or I might be looking at working on their functional movement patterns instead. It's a good time to get the body moving, building up like good solid movement and strength foundations for the training camp ahead, working on different things like that rather than working on Olympic lifting. Okay, I got a question from Burger33. I'm just going to reword how he's asked this question, but basically, this person is struggling with the first 2 or 3 rounds in a spar, and it seems like he's warming up in terms of his strength, speed, his power, and also his fitness after 4 rounds going into an 8-round spar. It sounds like a little bit of a slow starter, and I often get this question from boxers. 9 times out of 10, they are not warming up correctly when they're actually going in and sparring. Even though I'm in the strength and conditioning gym, I go out and watch the boxers spar, and sometimes I'll get involved to help them warm up and everything like that in terms of their mobility and potentiating and getting ready to get into for the spar. Sometimes I'll just kind of sit back, watch them, and also watch the other boxers that I don't work with as well. Sometimes I just see them doing some mobility and then going and sparring. Sometimes I just see them literally get the kit on, do a bit of shadow boxing, put the gloves on and get into the ring. I've been in the changing room for so many fighters now, and the intensity of the warm-up going into a fight is really high. The warm-ups are fantastic to watch, letting them get into the zone. Now, sparring is like literally the closest thing that you can get to a fight. But the warm-up is sometimes totally different. Sometimes they don't even hit a bag, and sometimes they don't even shadow box. So you need to make sure that you're warming up correctly going into that spar. So what I'd say is going through a full mobility warm-up, doing some potentiation exercises such as pogos, ice skaters, doing some banded shadow box, doing some punch iso holds, and then going on the pads with your coach or going on the heavy bag. And these are like fast and sharp rounds, maybe like 30 seconds to 60 seconds bursts because you're not wanting to fatigue yourself too much. A little bit similar to how you warm up for your bouts and for your fights. I'd just be looking for a more structured warm-up going in to sparring, making sure that you're elevating that heart rate. That's the main thing. Elevating the heart rate, getting up towards about 80 or 85%, your maximum heart rate is really important. This is what we actually see on our conditioning sessions when people are looking to try and work into that red zone. Sometimes they don't do warm-up, so in their first rep, they actually find it quite difficult for their heart rate to elevate to get into that working zone. What we say in our warm-ups is to make sure that our heart rate's getting elevated to 85% of their maximum heart rate, or maybe even just touching that red zone, which is 90% of maximum heart rate. This is what you need to do in your boxing. This is basically going to get the engine fired up and ready to go. And it's really interesting because this person's also give their metrics as well. He's 113 kilos, 198 centimeters tall, and is also 23 years old. So this person is a heavyweight boxer, so he's got a lot of mass to get that blood oxygen to the working muscles. So if that warm-up isn't done correctly, that's going to be more impactful on this person. So really have a look at your warm-up, and then going on to the pads, heavy bags, making sure that you're sharp, make sure they're elevating that heart rate and getting ready to go into the ring and spar. Okay guys, so that is the end of this week's episode of the Boxing Science Podcast. This is episode 60. Thank you very much for watching. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button so you can join the other 100,000 subscribers that are supporting the channel. And this will support the growth of the channel so it can bring you even bigger and better content. Thank you very much for watching or listening to the podcast. Hopefully see you on the next episode.